this is the part where we start to theory craft, and the part where we decode all the symbols and do all the things that we said don't do on your first watch.
Yeah.
You're allowed to do it afterwards.
We're going to Dan Brown this shit.
Oh my god. Go sit in the penalty box, should I?
I never left it.
So I have the first thing on the outline having to do with the characters, and that might not be the most interesting thing to people. I think if you see the movie, you might think of specific images, like the water bottles, or you might be like, what the fuck is up with the fish? It might be helpful to like lay a foundation here of some different interpretations of who we think these people are and their relationship to the themes of the movie, what they may or may not represent, different aspects of that, and talk about their arcs as a whole and what we think is happening there.
A couple of different lenses you can look at this through. For one thing, you've got the girl and the guy, which is in their age. Youthful innocence versus world-weary, experience. Is now the time for us to spoil the ending, by the way?
We totally can. Yep, we've crossed the line.
So, at the very end of the film, or near the end of the film, the guy destroys the egg. He actually stabs it with his cross-shaped weapon, his sword.
I love that you can't hear it.
Yes,
I love that too. That was such a good choice because the imagining of what it sounded like is so much worse than any sound effect they could have put in.
Yeah.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah. Now, he destroys the egg with that cross that he has there, and you can read this a couple of ways. The reading that I prefer is more that the egg, by the way, when broken, I should stress, is completely empty. There's nothing in it. There's only shell.
Is it?
So...
Indeed.
Well...
Is it?
Well, as far as physical objects go, there's nothing physically inside.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Was it?
So you could take it that, the cross being the symbol of Christianity, it's destroying this falsehood here, this thing that she was carrying around that would ultimately have ill effects, perhaps. What happens to the girl, though, after this, though, is quite interesting. She, of course, wakes up and screams, and that...
Yeah.
Yeah.
That scream was guttural, and it was pretty terrifying, as you'd expect, because she's been nursing this egg throughout the entire film, and it was on my mind for how much of it that something was going to happen to the egg, and so when you just get this moment where he stands up and just slowly raises the cross up above his head and brings it down, I was just like, oh, you absolute bastard. I did have to say though, like, because I'm a terrible person, I couldn't help but spin this alternate scene in my head of when she woke up and he would just be there, like, eating a full English. And the egg was oh my god, the egg was just like the last missing component of that, and then to really rub the salt in the wounds, he would just offer her a plate.
If there was like a chibi gag sketch short comedy version of this movie, that would be it.
Mm-hmm. He would make omurice.
Wow.
Oh man, I'm crying a little bit.
So yeah.
Also, that's another instance when she screamed that. I mean, you heard the scream, but they did this thing where they cut away from her face.
Yeah.
And you just see it echo through the halls of the cave.
Yeah.
And I think that not putting sight and sound together was super effective.
Yeah.
Also, a quick note, I found it a useful exercise to look up the soundtrack and see the track names and for what they were when they were playing. This one is not like super significant or whatever, but when he destroys the egg, the song that's playing is called Night Thief. But there are some really kind of interesting and I think revelatory track names.
That is a deep one.
Yeah.
The one when Amano Sagiri reemerges from the water at the end is called A New God.
Whoa.
So make of that what you will.
That Night Thief one, that's such a cynical name.
Yeah.
Because, that's a phrase from the New Testament, the thief in the night.
Yes.
That shows up in parables.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But it refers to the coming of Christ, right?
It does.
That is so cynical.
This is, I think like this is how people start to construct this idea that this is the pro-faith reading of the movie, that that destroying the egg is sort of like a death, and there's a rebirth, and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. I'm not as familiar with that reading. I wish I were, but if I were a better podcast host, I would have read those things too. But like, also there's a track that plays when it looks like they're in a church, but with the checkered floor and the stained glass windows.
Yes.
But it's called Opera House.
Yeah, I noticed that the cathedral had like theater seating, which is so
I noticed
interesting.
that too.
I was like, Catholic pews aren't that comfortable.
No.
If I know one thing about Catholicism.
That's the one thing that clued you in that this was not real life.
It really actually was. I was like, wait, this is surrealism.
No,
those chairs have arms.
No, I was a little bit like, the first time we watched it, I was like, is this a theater or is it a church?
That's so funny, because like that totally passed me by until I read the track name. I was like, wait a minute. This is no church.
Yeah, it had almost a stage, it looked like. Yeah. I'm always looking for that like empty theater metaphor.
Empty theater metaphor. Or church as performance.
Right. And maybe that explains like maybe that's an interesting maybe way to look at like the floor.
Yeah.
As a chessboard. But also like there's another reading of that floor that like in the Old Testament they talk about the Temple of King Solomon being designed with that kind of floor.
Oh.
And so perhaps you could say like whenever you see that floor, that is like sacrosanct ground or something like that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Notre Dame Cathedral, I thought it had checkered floors kind of like that.
Oh, it might do as well.
Yeah.
I know more about the Notre Dame football team than I do.
I've actually been inside that cathedral, but it was like 10 years ago, so I don't remember. I should know.
Nice. So, else do you guys have anything you want to add on who the characters are and what they represent?
The side characters are kind of more interesting to talk about because they are more like just symbols rather than like people who go on journeys.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
But personally, like for just to finish up for the girl and the man or the traveler or whatever you want.
I have stuff for them too.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
My personal take is that in the course of representing themes is that they represent one person and not just like one person before an event and one person after an event, but the same person like in chronological order at the same time.
Conflicting
both of them,
sides.
Yes, existing at the same time, because we don't know how long the girl's been there and we don't know how long the traveler's been there, though he says he's been there the whole time, and like they have both been on their respective journeys, just like not ran into each other until the point of the movie. So I think that they are like two kind of like conflicting ideas that come together and have to face each other. But both of them go through the same like time progression at the same time, in my opinion.
I think we're all kind of helping each other construct a fuller picture of the movie. Yeah. And I think like everything, it's like all of these things can be true, even if our interpretations aren't the same. I feel like there's so many kind of layers to every character and scene that I feel like it's imbued with like so many different kinds of meaning. I never thought that about them as kind of two parts of the same person, or like, two aspects of the soul. And part of me hesitates to go down that road just because not anything that you said or that you would think, but there are some shitty people that would be like, the male part of the soul is like seeking knowledge and is rational, and look at the female part of the silly beliefs in nothing.
Oh,
you joke, so but some of the analysis I've read say it in that tone of voice.
Are we getting our new YouTube audience on here?
I'm the smartest anime fan.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Oh, like so, but I think that's it. Not being that shitty about it. Like, I think that's really interesting. The girl is innocence, childhood, faithfulness, devotion. The end of her arc, I think, is tremendously interesting, and I think I can watch this movie a lot of times and kind of still feel like I don't fully grasp what's happening there, but it's, again, going to point out the soundtrack. Has her egg broken and she's running to catch up with the man and falls into what appears to be a bottomless chasm, which could be read as a metaphor for existential crisis. The track that's playing is called Transmigration, not like death or rebirth or anything. It's transmigration, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she falls into what appears to be a pool and then rapidly matures. I suppose, you could say, like, now that her innocence is gone, the object of her belief, she thinks that there is an angel, a bird within the egg. There's a dispute, by the way, about what the title of the film means. Is the angel the girl? Because in the beginning scene, she is running toward the camera and feathers trail behind her.
Mm-hmm.
Or is the angel the thing in the egg? The track in the soundtrack that is playing when it shows the giant fossilized avian creature,
Big Bird,
is called is called I wrote it down, Angel's Fossil.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the wings, the birds are. I feel like those are angels, but I mean, that doesn't also mean it's false that there's not a reading of the girl as angel.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. And there's like a saying that I can't help but think of, and I have no idea if this is in a sacred text, but growing up, I heard very much that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. And so you have a girl supposedly, dying, or looking like that's happening. And then what springs forth from her mouth once she's fully matured is 1 million eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I could not help but think of that those were sort of more seeds of faith, more kind of catalysts for the faithful and for the devout.
Not unheard of in Christian religion, of course, because this pivotal moment of faith and reaffirming of faith was the death of Christ.
And then the girl appears on Amano Sagiri, enshrined in stone, but not as her mature self, but as her child self cradling the egg before it was burst. So I would say not to skip ahead, but guess what? I'm going to skip ahead because it only makes sense. And talk about the orb just a bit and just reveal my feelings on it now. Y'all don't have to. The way I read what all this is that like that is some sort of, I guess, monument to acts of faith or to the beauty of the faithful in their most kind of devout moments. And I don't know, that may or may not be supported by other things, but that is what I came away with kind of from the end of her arc, is that the enshrining of her in stone on Amano Sagiri was like it was a positive thing, that it wasn't meant to be like a dig. But I could be wrong, right? Because Amano Sagiri has been cleansed, it plunged into the water and came back out. So does that mean it was that it needed some sort of purification, and that it is not a good thing? I'm not sure.
Maybe it's a bit too simplistic, but could Amano Sagiri simply just be heaven, rewarding the faithful? Maybe in that case, recontextualizing the guy as his emissary or his missionary?
Possibly. And that's interesting. Part of me, it doesn't want to like say that she's dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Interesting.
So but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. That's, like I said, that part, I'm just so kind of, I don't know. But as for the guy, I think it was a little bit easier for me to wrap my head around. Stranger in a strange land. It feels like he used to be a devout person because he can quote the entire, scripture, re the flood and Noah's Ark. But the way he says it and his expression, it feels like he's just spouting talking points that have been buried deep within him.
Yeah.
That he knows, even though he forgot them and something drudged them up. I want to ask you guys about his whole demeanor when he sees the fossilized angel / bird. What did you think was going through his mind? Because I think it can be read a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is maybe, like, I maybe have the least, like, strong feelings.
Like, interpretive wise.
I don't feel confident about my understanding of that scene at all.
There's so little dialogue. I don't know if seeing that because, he talks about, he sort of deviates from the Bible and speaks about a big bird, a giant bird, I guess that was sent out from the ark to discern if there was any dry land. The flood was over. And the young girl says that she's seen the bird and she shows it to him. And when he sees it, I think you could read his expression as like someone who was clinging on to a little bit of hope, having it crushed.
Yes.
Or you could read it as like someone who didn't have any but has seen something that re-sparked it.
Yeah.
It's hard. I don't know. I really don't know.
I was thinking maybe as well, maybe it's the fact that he was more surprised that people still, could link these two together, could believe the bird was still out there. Maybe it is, as you say, a reaffirmation of faith, or maybe it's just more that he's surprised that there are other people out there who can, read into it that way.
Okay, I think you mentioned when we watched it, I think you turned to me and you were like, is that even the bird that he was talking about? Like, I thought that was what you...
Did I?
Yeah, I think like when he sees the fossilized skeleton, and there's also a third possibility where he's like, this is something else completely.
Yeah.
Like her belief in the bird, she was thinking of something else entirely.
Mm-hmm. Whereas
from what I was even looking for.
He was thinking of the bird on the tree and the egg.
Yeah, and he was like, this isn't it either. I still have zero answers. Mm-hmm. That's like another possibility.
Yeah, it was a bitter realization, it looked like, but I don't know which way exactly.
Mm-hmm. Even that third one could be like still nothing.
Yeah.
This is still futile. Like
It's funny because there are birds that we see in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
They're inside these translucent eggs and they are dreaming. We see one at the beginning and we see several at the end after the girl spews forth, I guess, a bunch of other eggs. And that's the sort of thing that makes me say to myself that Oshii has these conflicting feelings or isn't just out to like take down faith or spirituality in general, because like I feel like it's an acknowledgement that like there's these things out there that are unexplained and unexplainable, and maybe human beings are trying their best to sort of claw and get at them conceptually, but like we just can't. And maybe these things don't even care about us. Perhaps they're just things that are dreaming. And perhaps their dreams, I mean, the boy, I think even, he goes all Cartesian, right? And alludes to it, and he's like, perhaps we're the figments of someone's dream. We don't really exist. Only the rain exists. Perhaps that's what's happening, is the dreams of these beings are what are bringing this world into existence.
Yeah, and wasn't that, I think in that line he says maybe we're the last fish in someone else's dream or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
And I should have done it before this podcast, but need to sit down and go through like the comparison of fish and birds.
In what, the fish and birds, like in the Bible? Or
no, just in this movie, just that like there are two main characters seeking birds, and then the fishermen who are like futilely chasing after fish and
to kill them.
Yes.
You've been experiencing an excerpt from the Warui Deshou anime podcast. To get the full episode or any of our full episodes, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, visit our page on SoundCloud, or go to waruideshou.wordpress.com.